It is May 26, 1973. A cargo ship left the Chagos archipelago headed for the coast of Mauritius. It carried one of the last remaining groups of Chagosians, the indigenous population of the Chagos Islands. Chagosians describe life on the islands as paradise, living like one big family. They had thriving villages, an abundance of fresh local produce, schools, and an undisturbed way of life. But now, they were being forcibly removed from their homes, not allowed to bring much with them, packed like animals on the bottom of a cargo ship. The story of what happened to the Chagosians still isn't widely known. Why were they being displaced, being treated so inhumanely? It begins with the U.S. setting its eyes on their land for a military base, and the U.S. conspiring with the U.K. to do whatever it took to get that land.
So this whole story has been shaped by secrecy, a lack of transparency, and indeed lies. A series of fictions about the Chagosians and about really every stage of the process.
It's been 50 years since the last ship left Chagos, but Chagosians are still fighting for their right to return home. Since the late 18th century, this set of 58 remote islands in the Indian Ocean was home to the Chagosian people. They call it Chagos. Remember this island here. It's central to this story. But by the end of 1973, their entire population was forcibly expelled from their ancestral land by the UK and the US, who changed their name of the islands to the British Indian Ocean Territory.
What happened to us? It's more purely like slavery. The way of uprooting people, force people to leave their country.
That's Olivier Bancourt, the leader of the Chagos Refugees Group, a group his mother and other Chagosian women created to advocate for the rights of the Chagosian people. Since 1997, the group has sued the British government multiple times for denying Chagosians their fundamental rights. This included a win in 2000 when the British High Court ruled the expulsion of the Chagos Islanders was illegal.
What we as Chagosians are asking, we are asking to be able to return to our birthplace, which is not a crime. And we condemn what had been done to us, which we consider as a crime against humanity.
Under international law, a crime against humanity is a deliberate act, typically as part of a systematic campaign that causes human suffering or death on a large scale. In 2023, Human Rights Watch declared the UK and the US had committed 3 crimes against humanity in relation to Chagosians: the forced displacement of their entire population, their continued blocking of their return home, their persecution by the UK on the grounds of race and ethnicity. To fully understand these crimes, we have to go back a few decades. If you know anything about US imperialism, then you know staying in control is always the goal. As the Cold War intensified, the strategic location of Chagos caught the attention of the US Navy.
US government officials in the era of decolonization were growing concerned about losing control of the world. And Diego Garcia became the prime island on which they wanted to build a base.
But wait, Diego Garcia is part of Chagos, which was governed as part of Mauritius, which had been under British colonial rule since 1814. Enter the secret deal. The US agreed that if the UK could get them Diego Garcia, their $14 million debt for submarine missiles would be settled. There were a few conditions though. First, everything about this deal had to remain top secret to avoid protocols that required the UK to report to the UN about its continuous colonial rule over a country with a permanent population. Secondly, the US insisted that the islands had to be cleared of Chagosians. The UK assured there will be no indigenous population except seagulls. But again, Diego Garcia is part of Chagos, which was part of Mauritius, and Mauritius was about to gain its independence from the UK. Enter more scheming from the UK. The UK coerced Mauritius to give Chagos up as a condition for independence, and Mauritius agreed. In 1965, Britain established the British Indian Ocean Territory, commencing the violent removal of the Chagosian people. UK authorities began by lying, claiming that the whole Chagos community, which had been there for generations, was made up of contract laborers and not a permanent population. This was to fabricate proof, suggesting no population needed to be consulted.
I was born on Diego Garcia. You can't offer the US government my place of birth without my consent. That's not fair.
In a matter of 8 years, all Chagosians were uprooted from the land they had called home for generations. Families were separated and their tight-knit community was torn apart. They were loaded onto ships and transported to Mauritius and the Seychelles with promises of better lives and compensation.
3 of us in the house, in one room. I recall that quite clearly. One room like this one, tiny room. All of us in that room.
The Chagosians were left stranded in unfamiliar countries, forced to live in foul conditions. What was promised to them was never delivered, leaving them without the means to rebuild their lives.
My mom left Diego Garcia without my birth certificate. And it was hard to go to the doctor, to go to places, because I don't have a birth certificate. I can say that I don't have an identity.
Many Chagosians firmly believe that the emotional trauma of being forcibly separated from their homeland and families, coupled with the harsh realities of poverty, caused some in their community to die early. So much death, and yet, still to this day, Chagosians have to fight for their losses to be recognized and their right to permanently return home.